As journalists and television hosts, scripts are a lifeline. Each newscast, each story, it all revolves around a script.
But now it's time to go unscripted. That means we're not just going off script, we're throwing out the script altogether.
Each week, we're joined by fellow Farm Journal hosts and editors to peel back the layers on stories we've shared throughout the week.
Unscripted. It's real, it's raw, it's entertaining, and it's your chance to meet the personalities behind the personalities. I'm Tyne Morgan.
And I'm Clinton Griffiths. Welcome to Unscripted.
Unscripted, and what a week it was, Clinton. I mean, I feel like a broken record. We always talk about how much happened the past week or 2 weeks on the podcast. And believe me, there's enough to last us a good few months from
Oh
this.
my gosh. You know that like the announcement with the UK, it feels like was 3 months ago.
You're
And
right.
it was like late last week.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how fast everything moves.
There
It's just
is.
unbelievable. And the velocity, we talk about this a lot. The velocity of information that's just like coming across the desk every day is just wild. But you know what? It gives us something to talk about. It sure does. It keeps us
Something to
busy.
talk about and keeps us in business. But as farmers try to navigate it, that's what you're going to help with today. I know you had an interesting conversation. I want to preface that conversation with, we all have that friend that sometimes just has to put you over their back and carry you to the finish line. And that's what Clinton did with me this week.
No, that's not. Well, it was one of those weeks, time where it was kind of a divide and conquer. Just like, hey, none of these times are working out. We're just going to get it done, and we did. We just got it done, and had a good conversation with a woman named Callie Eideberg, works for the Vogel Group, about what's going on in DC. And so she would like has one availability, and she's at a conference in California. So it was great to be able to catch up with her. But she gave us some pretty good perspective on all of the moving parts and pieces that are happening there in DC, which folks will hear here in just a little bit.
Yeah, Clinton carried that conversation, and it is a
Oh no,
fascinating conversation. Kind of,
limped it along more
yeah, carried
like
it. But,
rolling a rock uphill, but she
yeah,
did well.
she did, and you kind of peel back the curtain a little bit to look at what's going on in Washington right now, and this is an interesting time. There's no time in
Hmm.
history to compare this to, and so let's get right into the conversation and in talking tea.
All right, well, time stepping out, but we have Callie Eideberg joining us here on Unscripted. She's with the Vogel Group. And Callie, just a little background about yourself. You
Mhm.
kind of follow along and track what's going on in Washington and DC pretty closely.
I mean, sure, that is my day to day. I watch the House, I watch the Senate, I watch USDA. This is what they do and the decisions that they make or that they don't make really have an effect on farmers and food and companies. And we have to track these things to ensure that we're not getting snowed. This is
Yeah,
important stuff. Yeah, you got
yeah.
to watch the details.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of details, we should tell people that you are at an actual farm. And so you are not in DC sitting right now because you're out amongst the folks there in California.
Mhm.
Tell
Mhm.
us just so people understand, like, no, I don't normally just stand outside in a beautiful backdrop of a, California, landscape and barn. So yeah, anyway, welcome and glad you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
All right, so
Thank you.
let's
It's great to
yeah.
be here.
All right, so let's talk about this reconciliation bill because that has been the biggest news of things that have happened
Mhm.
this week. We've had a few things move through the House. Walk us through how this is all coming together.
Sure. Well, I think it's key to understand just very briefly what reconciliation is. It's not a normal bill that Congress will pass. It's a way to push a agenda. Um, and a way to push a partisan agenda. This administration is following in the footsteps of the previous administration, so this is not a Republican or Democratic thing. When one particular party has both the House, Senate, and White House, they will always try to do a reconciliation bill because at the end of the day, it will enable the Congress to pass a bill without having to get to 60 votes in the Senate.
Mm,
So
yeah,
you're short circuiting the Senate filibuster. And that's why it's important to an administration to use this process when they can.
Yeah, and other
So that's
administrations have
that's the
used it.
goal.
It's yeah,
Mhm.
this is not new. This has been used in other
It
past
has.
administrations to move pretty big pieces of
Mhm.
legislation. In fact, this one
Yes.
has been, I guess, dubbed the big beautiful bill because it's a bunch of things wrapped up into one thing.
That is right, that is right, and, they're trying to do a lot in this bill because they know that this is their one at bat, and so do it all. Very likely things will fall out of the bill, but they're gonna start big. Go
Okay.
big, go home.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk some farm
Mhm.
and agriculture specifics here. House Ag Committee looking at maybe trying to make some adjustments to the farm bill, even though we
Yeah.
haven't seen a whole farm bill move.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the process that's happening in the House of Representatives right now, and then specifically in the House Ag Committee, is kind of twofold. First of all, this administration has been very clear, and this Congress has been very clear that they want to cut the federal budget. They want to reduce the amount of spending that's happening in Congress. And so this reconciliation bill is part of that. The House Agriculture Committee has been directed to cut $230 billion out of their jurisdiction. So that's the first thing that this committee and Chairman Thompson is trying to accomplish.
Okay.
The second thing, Clinton, is what you just referred to. Try to get some of these wins that they were not, the Farm Bill wins, that they were not able, Congress was not able to accomplish during the last Congress, the last year. So, what are those big priorities in the Farm Bill that they
Mhm.
need to get done and for farmers? And then what spending do they need to cut? Those are the two big goals that are happening at the House Agriculture Committee this week. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that we've talked quite a bit about are reference prices for
Mhm.
commodities, updating those. I spoke with Joe Outlaw, who's a professor there at Texas A&M last week in Kansas City, and he told me, "Listen, I wrote that for Congress in 2012. Like
Yeah.
we used 2012 numbers to write write that and do the calculations. So yeah, it's probably time to update the numbers."
Yes.
He seemed very matter of fact that we need to do something in agriculture in order to update kind of the safety net behind
Mhm.
what our commodities rely on. Is that the kind of the what you're hearing from folks on
Yeah.
Capitol Hill?
Absolutely. And frankly, that has been the desire, that has been the mantra for the last couple of years. The last farm bill we passed was passed pre COVID, and the world has just fundamentally changed, especially in the agriculture economy. And so, getting those reference prices up there, making some additional investments in MAP and FMD research, those are the type of things, crop insurance, that has been a real priority. I will also say, though, and this is why we are seeing those topics come up now as part of reconciliation, those reference price increases were the really big political stumbling block last year, and why we couldn't, Congress, keep saying we, why Congress couldn't get that bill done last year.
Mm,
Reference prices are important, but they're also expensive. And
right.
so, where does Congress go to find 40, 50, 60 billion dollars to pay for that? And that's the challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard someone tell me last week we had several economists with us, and one of them said, "Listen, unless the president says, you know what, I'm going to give you $50 billion to just go get a farm bill done, then it's going to be really hard. Otherwise, you have to come up with somewhere to
Mhm.
save the money and then spend
Mhm.
the money. And right now, it looks like the nutrition program and SNAP and may be kind of the target where they're going to try to
Yes.
save some money and then spend some money."
That's exactly right. One of the holdups last year in Congress, and the chairwoman of the Senate Ag Committee used to say this all the time. She used to say, "We're not going to rob from Peter to pay Paul. We're not going to steal from the nutrition programs to pay for commodity programs." And so that was a big stumbling block politically. Now we are in a different political space. The Senate is controlled by Republicans, and the Republicans have the opportunity to pass this reconciliation bill and avoid the need for any Democratic votes in the Senate. So that is now we are caught ourselves up to where we are this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it is interesting. I mean, the nutrition title, obviously, we've talked about this before. Should we decouple agriculture, the agriculture titles from the nutrition title? And often what comes back is, well, if we do that, we're going to have a hard time ever moving a farm bill because there's
Mhm.
just not enough farm state farm centric senators or congress people in the chamber these days to really get the agriculture side done. So they leave it together.
Yes.
But it makes it hard
Clinton,
because it is
yeah,
together, right?
it is together. And Clinton, that's what in Washington, D.C., that's what we call the Farm Bill Coalition.
Mhm.
Because as you just said, we don't have enough farm state and farm district members to pass a farm bill just with those member supports. And so, in order to get to 219 votes in the House and 60 votes in the Senate, you have to bring in other sweeteners for other members to care, frankly. And that's why the nutrition programs were originally brought into the Farm Bill jurisdiction
Yeah.
many decades ago.
Yeah, yeah. What about this idea of kicking some of the management or some of the responsibility really back to
Mhm.
the states for the SNAP program? Do you think that gets through a reconciliation process from House to Senate?
Sure. Well, let's maybe we take a half step back and talk about why
Sure.
that's in there. The House, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the House was directed to cut $230 billion from their jurisdiction. Nutrition programs are the bulk of the spending out of the Agriculture Committee. And so it is very natural to go and look at nutrition programs for those cuts. But at the same time, because we haven't been able to do a farm bill, the chairman of the committee wants to increase spending on commodity programs, specifically
Mhm.
those reference prices.
Sure.
And dance around the number because the percentage of increase can really change what that spending is. Again, is it 40 billion, 50 billion, 60 billion? It depends on where
Sure.
you put the percentage of increase. So what one way, so you guys, if they're going to go into the SNAP program and find savings, you then peel that onion back a couple layers and be like, okay, well, how do these programs work and where do you find savings? You're not just going to identify waste, fraud, and abuse and get to 230 billion or the additional money, 40, 50 billion to pay for
Mm.
the increases in reference prices. So you've got to go elsewhere. And that brings us to the shifting of the burden of paying for SNAP benefits onto the states. And that's
Okay.
where this idea comes from. Um, it's an interesting idea, and I think there's a lot of value in keeping states accountable for the federal spending that they are implementing.
Mm.
But we have heard pushback from states. We've heard pushback from members who represent those states, not just Democrats on the committee, but also Republicans who are very concerned about how this will affect state budgets. And it will affect state budgets. Where do some states are in better positions than others, but where
Yeah.
are states going to come up with the billions of dollars to make up for this shortfall? Or will they? Will they make up this funding?
Mm.
That remains to be seen. And that is, kind of the political,
Yeah.
knot tying that we see some folks
Yeah.
wrestling with right now.
I mean, Kelly, we
Yeah.
would expect states to be a little reticent, like, "Nah, we
Oh,
don't really
sure.
wanna have to do that." Of course they don't
Right.
wanna do it
Of
because
course they don't.
then they've gotta come up with that money out of their own budget.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
obviously it makes sense that they want to keep it at the federal level. I'm
Sure.
assuming there's a lot of behind the scenes,
Oh,
lobbying, tug and
absolutely.
forth, trying to make sure that this doesn't happen or does happen one way or the other. Um, so is in terms of this actually happening, what odds do you give it? What do you think?
Well, we're still fairly early in the
It's
process.
early? Okay.
We haven't hit the halfway point. The Agriculture Committee, as well as two other committees, just wrapped up their committee business this week. Um, Gosh, I think the Ag Committee was in for something like 12 hours debating this, and that was just on Wednesday. That doesn't even count the hours they put in on Tuesday. Ways and Means Committee, the tax provisions, oh my goodness, they were in for 26 hours straight. So the committees have now completed their jobs and they are reporting out their bill text. This
Mm.
bill text is now going to get cobbled together into one big, beautiful bill, as you already identified. And that bill will go to the House floor. I fully expect there to be a lot of wrangling behind the scenes, a lot of horse trading, whether that's in the ag space or with other issues. There's a lot of other issues that are
Oh, for
undecided,
sure.
and we have Republican members who are pushing back against their own leadership, and so there's some issues that need to be decided. But Speaker Johnson has said he wants to have this bill out of the House by Memorial Day, and the clock is ticking. So let's assume that they resolve their issues internally on the House side. They put this bill on the floor. We have a marathon debate. People are up really late at night, and the bill passes the
Okay.
House floor. Then we move on to the Senate. And I laugh a little bit because the Senate, oh, it really does the adulting in this space. You know, fundamentally, House and Senate is different because House members represent 600,000 people in a district and senators represent an entire state. So senators
Sure.
tend to take a little bit of a broader view. The Senate, especially in the ag space, Mr. Bozeman has been very tight lipped about what he will accept in a reconciliation package
Okay.
for the money, the spending, and the programs under his jurisdiction. I think he probably shares a lot of the same goals, but will he go to the same extreme for cuts and then increases
Okay.
in the commodity programs?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
big question mark.
it sounds like it's just going to be a really fascinating bill and process to watch.
Yeah.
Obviously, agriculture has a lot at stake. Like I'm looking at
Mhm.
a USDA release that says that farm sector production expenses are forecast to remain above the 20-year average in the
Yeah.
year this year and in the year ahead. I mean, those are
Hence the
the
need for reference price increases, right? Like
Yes, those are the
this
realities on the ground
yeah,
that
it's
we
real.
know that farmers are they're worried about, they're stressed about. Obviously, we have a crop going in. People have borrowed money.
Mhm.
We've got some trade things happening, which I
Mhm.
think we ought to get to next, Callie. And so all of those things together lend themselves to say, "Hey, Congress, figure this out. Like,
Yeah.
it's time. You need to figure
Yeah.
this out in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, there's the potential that it could get really ugly." And
Yeah.
it just seems like that is the warning that everyone is saying, from their farms and from the
Yeah.
different parts of the country.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, and this alarm has been sounded for a while, but we're now seeing Congress really start to move forward.
Yeah.
But, there's always trade-offs, there's always winners
Mm.
and losers, and that's part of the debate in Congress, who's gonna win this round and who's gonna lose. Yeah.
Well, and Callie, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems like agriculture is just going to be one chip on the table. There are other issues, there
Mhm.
are other topics that are getting traded,
Yeah.
that are getting moved around right now. That ultimately will be all part of whatever the final deal is,
Yes.
and where agriculture ends up falling may not look like it looks right now.
Yeah. Well, and I'll give you a little tea because I love the name of the segment.
Oh, I love it, a little tea. Let's do it.
At the well, at the end of last Congress in December, after the election, there were some heated conversations about how to get maybe not a full farm bill across the table, but some spending increases and some improvements in that space. I think that if this world was determined by the House and Senate Ag Committee chair and ranking members, a deal would have been done. But when you're talking end of the year omnibus spending bills, you bring a lot of other personalities into it. And Clinton, as you just said, ag is not necessarily, the primary driver of those
Yeah.
conversations and those deals. I mean, it should be, in my opinion, but it's not. There's so many other issues that are out there. And so it is really key for agriculture interests to stay engaged in this process and
Okay.
making sure that the leadership is paying attention, not just ag committee leadership, but House and Senate leadership is on this.
Need to continue putting our voices out there and talking
Absolutely.
about this issue. Let's flip a little bit and talk some about the trade
Hmm.
situation and some of the movement we've seen there. Just in the last week, the president announcing a deal of some sort, right? That we're still working
Hmm.
out all the
With
details
the
on
UK. Hmm.
with the UK. kind of a big deal? Where do you
Mhm.
is it a big deal? Not a big deal? How does it strike you?
To me, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. I mean, I think
Okay.
it's a great deal for ethanol and for beef. I mean, those industries are very excited about this. However, we're still in a quite tumultuous period. One deal is not enough
Mhm.
to keep markets open for all of agricultural commodities. The big one is China. The soybean market and the export market into China is at a quite precarious situation right now, losing market share to Brazil. We did have the deal, I guess, in theory, that Secretary Bessent made. What was it, last weekend,
Mm.
in Switzerland? But we don't have those details yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't know where it's going to go. We can have an agreement to have an agreement, but that's not the details we need. So it's a good sign, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
I'll also back up a second and say, especially when it comes to China, this is a little bit of a problem in our own making, right? Like the president put agriculture in this position. And he should be in a position to get us out of this. And I think there's a lot of folks who are very hopeful that he's going to get there. But agreeing to have an agreement does not reestablish these markets yet. We got
Yeah.
a long way to go.
We've got a ways to go. I think that's obvious, very clear that we're a long ways from having anything that is kind of a longer term path forward, and that's sustainable and hopefully
Hmm.
sustainable regardless of administration. Um, so that there is some certainty. I also had somebody tell me last week we should just leave ag alone. Just leave ag alone for a couple of years. Let us scab over. So you know what I mean. So we can just kind of heal up
Yeah.
and I don't disagree with that sentiment. I think that for the most part, agriculture we want to sell our goods overseas. We want to make and grow crops and raise livestock above the cost of production.
Mhm.
Those are all truths that I think everybody agrees with.
We
And
want to
really,
make
nobody,
money and feed the world.
yeah, want to make
Pretty
money, feed the
simple.
world, but at the same time, we don't want you to just give us money. We'd rather sell it for a profit. That's
Yep.
fine. And I don't think that anybody disagrees that there were some situations, and there are some situations where there are barriers to entry for our products
Hmm.
that countries have put on, and that they deserve to be addressed, and that
Hmm.
it may take a little bit of tough talk to get them there.
Yeah.
And Europe is the perfect example, right? Like they're very protectionist of their own farmers, but at the same and not very open to some of our products. And so at the same time, you would say, hey, could we be a better trading partner with someone like
Hmm.
that?
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. And I mean, I have personally been hearing these woes from farmers on the trade sector for more than
Sure.
2 decades. So you are
Mm,
absolutely right that there are issues that need to be addressed. Um, let's all be very hopeful that this is the path to get there. The tough talk, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the breakthrough. The uncertainty is really challenging. In the meantime, we do have other countries stepping up.
mm,
And that is the big concern. Like
sure.
it's not just two actors here. This is a dynamic world market, and we need to be cognizant of that.
Yeah. And it's hard to make all of those negotiations at once. And I know that's a big
Yeah.
part of it. But I think all of us are okay, we're in it now, regardless of whether we wanted to be. We're in it now. So let's be hopeful that there's a positive light on the other side of
Yeah.
this. What are you hearing from folks in Washington about trade and kind of future uh, momentum or future direction of
Hmm.
what may be coming for this
Hmm.
important topic?
Well, I think if we wanted to go back to our conversation about reconciliation a couple of minutes ago,
Sure.
um, there's a recognition that we're in a tough spot with trade right now. And again, it may all work out, and we may be riding high here pretty soon. But in the meantime, no matter what, we're going to need to, as a country and as an industry, go back and build some of these markets and rebuild some of these relationships and identify new ones at the same time. The exact number is escaping me, but in the reconciliation bill, the product that Chairman Thompson has put forward, there's a significant amount of money in there
Mm,
for the MAP and FMD, which are the two key programs at USDA that help farmers and industry build markets overseas. And so there is a recognition that we're going to have to go back in and do that hard work. I don't think that work ever ends,
Sure.
but there is, this is going to be a key focus moving forward for sure.
Yeah. Give me give me two things that you're watching from folks in Washington that people out in farm country need to know about or need to keep an eye on.
Hmm. Well, I mean, the key thing for me, and we have talked about, is reconciliation and where do those political dynamics go? I am always watching the actors in this space.
Okay.
Um, Policy and politics is very personality driven. Yes,
Mm,
the policies are important. Yes, the economics are important. But these, we have 535 members of the House and Senate, and they're all different and they're all different individuals and different priorities. And so watching those people and the votes that they take and the statements they take is something that I am always looking for. Very quick example, this debate about SNAP and moving some of the funding to the responsibility of the states. We heard a couple of Republican members on committee push back and say, I don't want this for my state.
mm,
But at the end of the day, that bill went through committee completely along party lines. And so they did step up and they voted for it. So that to me is very interesting. We're still seeing a united Republican Party
mm.
move this reconciliation bill move forward. So those personalities are very interesting to me. Um, what else are we watching? You know, we haven't talked about this yet, Clinton, but at least, yeah, we haven't talked about this yet. The Secretary of the Health and Human Services Department,
Sure.
RFK Jr.,
Yeah.
he has gotten much more active. I mean, you want to talk about personalities, man. He has been a force in DC these last couple of months, but he has gotten much more active in what many would consider USDA's lane.
Okay.
um, he is talking about certain agricultural products like sugar being poison, which is quite inflammatory. He's getting involved in saying things about pesticides and the ability of farmers to use those crop protection tools on their farms. To be clear, he, as the cabinet secretary for health and human services, does not have the legal authority to remove those, but what does that influence look like behind the scenes? And is
Sure.
he going to have the pull with the president, with EPA Administrator Zeldin, or with USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins to make some of the changes that he's been talking about and been talking about for years? So that is another personality that I am watching. And I raise it now because we may see announcements maybe as next week, or definitely probably by the end of May, as to where he and this administration want the Maha movement to go. We're expecting a
Mm,
report at some point, again, as early as next week, maybe by the end of the month, about kind of where their general head is at in this space. And that could be the roadmap, the pathway that they
yeah.
lay out for us. They've been
Any
super
rumblings
tight lipped
on
about it, though.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Mm-mm,
ask you. Is there any
really
rumblings
tight
out there of
lipped.
what may, end up written
Well, I
into
mean,
a
I think
report like that?
we're gonna see kind of the big issues, right? There we could see something on pesticides. We're gonna see probably more on food additives. Outside of the food and ag space, we're probably going to see something on vaccines and that type of regulatory side, because that does have an impact on health, and he's very focused on health. But I think those are some of the key issues that I'm going to be watching. And then what happens with his relationship with his broader administration? Again, DC is all very personality based.
Yeah,
And we have a
well, it
lot of
is.
fun personalities to watch right now. Very interesting folks making decisions.
Well, it is, and it to watch what is said and then what happens, often can be completely different conversations and completely different results. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, just the personalities in
Hmm.
Washington, and it does feel like there are some moves. While Republicans control the three chambers, on the Democratic side, it does feel like there's some moves for people trying to get a little more attention and try to raise their hand for leadership and things like that, that we're seeing and hearing a little bit more from that side of the aisle as well. So it's interesting times for DC. Does this compare to anything that you've witnessed and watched and been a part of in previous years and administrations there in the city?
Ah, no,
No, it's just different.
absolutely not. I mean, I
Uh,
think we saw, um, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of using the word unprecedented, but we had a lot of unprecedented actions during the first Trump administration. That was tempered a lot because I think the president had kind of the more traditional old school type advisors surrounding him.
mm,
This time, all bets are off. He has a different group of folks, people who are much more vocal, a lot less establishment. And so things have gotten even more unprecedented.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, and I will tell you what I'm hearing from kind of the business community is that it is extremely difficult to run a business, to plan, to put a new move a new product to market, when we are in this tumultuous time. So,
yeah,
you gotta hope that we get through the first 6 months of this administration and things start to smooth out a little bit, that we've
yeah,
seen the big flash and bang, and then go back to something that's more of a little bit of a predictable business environment for folks, because I think of that as, as you mentioned, Clinton, I'm out on a farm. I'm out talking to folks right now, out in the ag industry, and folks are interested in a little more predictability at this point. Want to solve these problems and then be able to move forward with a business
sure.
perspective. Yeah.
Well, and I don't you think that there's a little bit of a ticking clock here for this
Mm.
administration?
Oh,
They have
yeah.
a window, what, 6, 8 months before
Absolutely.
we start to think about midterm elections,
Yes.
and then after a year and a half, then or 2.5 years, then you got to start thinking about the next presidential election,
Yeah.
whoever that may be. And so, they're really front loading a lot of things in the first 6 to 8 months,
Yes.
trying to kind of get it pushed over the hill and say, and also I really feel like, um, you know, the economy is such a focus for President Trump that
Hmm.
he wants it to do well. So he
Yes.
understands that we need calm, we need predictability. But my personal opinion is that he's front loading a lot of these things to try to get it to where he wants, so then can write it out after that. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that maybe after 8, 9 months of this, maybe we kind of flatten out a little bit. I don't doubt that we'll ever get away from the Friday at 5 o'clock press release or a big announcement, or continue to take on other corners of the world, or the country that they want to address. I think that will continue. But as far as like the big overarching push, it just feels like the first 6 to 8 months is really where they're going to really try to make the most movement.
Yeah. Clinton, I think you're 100% right. I could not have said it better myself. I'm now worried that you are going to be able to come in here and like take my job. We're going to
No,
switch one day.
no.
But yeah, I think you're reading those tea leaves just right.
Okay, okay,
You only have, and this is true for any administration. You have a certain amount of time. The president is still spending on political goodwill from the election. He's going to take
sure.
every advantage of it that he can. And at some point, that will end as we get closer to the midterms. Not, no one is ever totally sure when that happens, but he is going to push it until he cannot any longer.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Callie, it's fascinating. Always appreciate you taking a few minutes to join me and visit Callie Eideberg with the Vogel Group, and thank you again for finding a way to jump on Unscripted with us and have this conversation about
This
what's
is so
happening in
fun.
Washington, because
Yeah.
it's just a
Yeah.
fascinating time.
Yes, I'm happy to be here, glad to talk about this stuff,
No,
especially on such a beautiful day where I can see
oh,
horses and
awesome,
cows and
awesome.
goats. This is great. This is the best of
Now,
both
what
worlds.
got you interested in policy? Why did you start down this path?
Oh gosh. Um, I just kind of always was this way as a kid, a little bit of a nerd. Um, I remember my parents being active and always having the news on and always discussions, which I think is so great for kids to be involved in their government and understand
Sure.
civics and how this works. And so that really got me interested and just carried that through college. When I landed in DC, I had an opportunity to get involved in agriculture policy, which is just amazing because I love to eat. I do it multiple times a day,
I
and I
obviously not
thoroughly enjoy
just
it. So,
news.
so that is that connection and that impact, I think, on my life and the life of my family and my friends and my community is really what keeps me going every day. I love it.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Kelly, appreciate it. Thank you again. Really,
Thanks for having
really
me.
enjoyed the conversation. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Thanks, Clinton. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. So great conversation there, Tyne. I mean, just really interesting, good perspective on what's going on. And again, so so many interesting people and things happening in Washington.
She didn't want to use the word unprecedented because
Hmm.
she feels
Hmm.
like she's been using it too much. But what else would you use to describe the current times we're in? I mean, Clinton, let's just use last weekend as an example, okay?
Right. Okay.
We went into the weekend thinking that there was just going to be some conversations with China, thinking that maybe they'll cool the waters a little bit, thinking that, maybe we'll make some progress. And
Hmm.
man, Mother's Day, there was a slew of news, including that we've kind of struck a deal with China and tariffs are going to come down. And there's an agreement now to move forward. There's 90 days here of a bit of a reprieve. But it sounds like China needed to make an agreement. They needed to come to the table. Their economy is struggling a bit right now
Sure.
with what
Yeah.
Trump has put into place. And I don't think a lot of people, if you were a betting person and you were betting in Las Vegas leading into last weekend, I don't think a lot of people were betting that we would see an agreement in place. We look at last Trump administration and how
Hmm.
long it took to make this. I mean, unprecedented again. It's not like any other time in history.
But
And
again, they've got a framework. They worked on it the last time, so just start there. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe that's why we saw things move so quickly is because hey, we've already kind of did this once. It just kind of got ignored for a few years, but now let's get back to it. Maybe that's where they're going back to, and that would make sense. And that's why I think you could be like, okay, yeah, well, we could go back to that and move on.
and it sounds like, I mean, I don't we don't know exactly the details.
Hmm.
But the
Hmm.
fact that we're moving in this direction and conversations are even happening, Clinton, every
Hmm.
farmer we talk to right now, or most farmers that I talk to right now, I mean, there's farmers frustrated with the trade war and how it was playing out. But a lot of farmers, it's this short-term pain for long-term gain. And really the sentiment was it depends on how short-term this is going to be. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
stick by the president's side. But if this goes on a year, if this drags out like the last trade war, there's only so much that we can handle. I don't think a lot thought that this would be this short. And there's a lot. This is not a complete done
Hmm.
deal. There's a lot that has to be
Well,
worked out.
and Ten, I thought this was a good point. Someone said this to me last week when we were in Kansas City, and he said, it's risk versus a reward.
Mhm,
Last time, we understood there was a risk, and
mhm,
then we got to the reward,
mhm,
but it didn't last very long. So
mhm.
their hope is like we don't mind the risk as long as the reward is long enough to
Yeah.
make it worthwhile. And so I think that's where you get into like kind of some continuity of policy here, and it's just really hard in the political environment we're in to get that continuity between administrations. And so if it will carry forward for a few years, then you get the rewards of all of the hard negotiations that have to happen to get there.
But there is so much room for growth. I mean, I go back to this
Agreed. Agreed.
conversation now, Clinton, of have we become too reliant upon exports? I know that we need exports. I know it is an important piece.
Mhm,
But when
mhm.
you look at how reliant that we have become, is there a way to use more of this domestically? I mean, you just look at this week talking about in Washington, which we're going to get into this in a minute, but you look at in the one big beautiful bill and all of these things with the 45Z tax credit that's been extended and some of these other things domestically, can we create more demand domestically? And if we are getting to the point of deglobalization, then that is something that we need to focus on and we need to work toward. And yes,
Yeah.
exports are always going to be an important part, but for some of our commodities, have we become too reliant? And that'll be that, we'll see how this plays out. But Clinton, I do want to get into our next segment. Okay, real quick. Can we go ahead and get into what the Sigma?
What the? What
So
the? What the Sigma time?
this is a burning question that I've had since we just listened to Callie. Are you gunning for her job?
For who?
Are you
For
gunning for
no,
her job?
yeah.
I asked you that.
She, she did say that maybe I could do this. I'm not gunning for her job. She did a
Really?
great job. I don't need that kind of heat. I don't need that kind of smoke.
Yeah, there's always smoke in Washington. But you did a great job of summarizing the conversation and just the dynamics at
Yeah.
play right now. But also what the Sigma there. I have seen so many headlines about this one big beautiful bill.
You
Uh,
like the title of that? You like the one big beautiful bill time? It's catchy. Like you know what they're talking about. It's just that
it's
one big beautiful bill.
it's very President Trump. I will say that. It is very
100%.
President Trump, I feel like. You go
100%.
back to President or former President Biden's, the Build Back Better and all of that.
Mhm.
I didn't really care for that either. One big beautiful bill. I don't, I don't know. Maybe, we like to set
You
and
don't
we
like alliteration is what you're saying.
I
You don't
love
like to write with alliteration. Let's go.
I
Come on,
love
we
me
gonna
some
get into some
alliteration.
grammar
I
or what?
do. You do need to know that Clinton and I, what we do like to do, we like to brainstorm. Like if we're coming up with a series, it's like, oh, give us the idea. We're going to brainstorm. What Clinton
Mhm.
and I have learned is no matter what we come up with, our boss, Brian, always has something better. Now, make this space here. Is it technically better? It
I
is in
don't
his mind,
know.
so it wins, right? And so I will call him like with an idea and know that he's going to come up with something better in his mind. But we do love to brainstorm. Okay, so we talked a lot about the House Ag Committee's version, and so each of these committees are coming up with and she
Yep.
explained it. Each of these committees are coming up with their own version. This will be put into this one big beautiful bill, which is massive, absolutely
Mhm.
massive.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
when you look at and there was some fight in the House Ag Committee, which you guys already went into. But when you look at the House Ways and Means Committee and the tax provisions right now that pass that are part right as of right now, this could be, it could
Sure.
change.
Yep.
But it is favorable for farmers, Clinton. When
Mhm.
you look at some of these things that are being proposed, and it's really making some of the things, the 2017 tax cuts, making those permanent and some other things. Paul Neiffer, farm CPA, no one explains it better than Paul Neiffer. And I asked him, I said, Paul, what would you rate this? And he said, out of a 10, I'd give it an 8 or a 9. It's not a 10, but it is pretty darn close. So, what are the biggest benefits for farmers? Here's what Paul Neiffer had to say,
Okay.
Clinton.
Trump tax cuts are basically extended, but some of it has been enhanced. The ones I think that the farmers are most interested in is bonus depreciation at 100% will be effective as of January 20th through the end of 2029. So that means every asset a farmer buys other than farmland is 100% deductible. That's great. And then Section 179 is bumped up to 2.5 million starting next year. And then we have the Section 199 Cap A deduction. It's made permanent and enhanced. Instead of being at the 20% level, it will now be at the 23% level. So that's an extra 15% increase in that deduction, basically. And then for those farmers that have quite a bit of net worth that they built up, either through their efforts or through the fact that farmland values have gone up a lot, the lifetime exemption starting next year will be $15 million and it's made permanent.
Clinton. That's
Mm.
part of Chip's Corner this weekend. You can listen to more of it with some analysis. But I mean, every ag group that I've seen release reaction to the House Ways and Means Committee, the version of their big beautiful one big beautiful bill, uh, is favorable. I mean, it is favorable for
Yeah.
farmers, and so we'll see if it makes it. But one thing that Paul Neiffer told me was the word on the street is President Trump wants this finished. He wants to sign it on July 4th, kind of
Ah,
a gift to America. So that's the
interesting.
deadline. Is there going to be a fight to get there? Yes. And we saw
Oh,
that.
there's gonna be a fight. I mean, and that's part of the thing that I keep. Obviously, it's got to come out of committee, and then it's got to get scored, and then it has to get voted on by the House, and then whatever gets voted on, if it passes, then you got to get through the Senate, and they're gonna have their own versions, and then you got to reconcile the two. So, like, we've got, I don't know, we've got weeks here of negotiations ahead of us. But it is nice that they're starting at a spot, at least from what Paul was saying, that seems to lend itself to very positive and helpful to farmers.
Mhm. And as we heard earlier, this is one massive bill, and we will not keep it this massive more than likely,
Mhm.
but go big or go home, right? Is that what she said? Go big or go home is kind of the motto right now when it comes to this one big, beautiful bill. So that was just something interesting. I thought, as it's hard to follow policy until things are final. And I know farmers get frustrated by that, Clinton, because
Yep,
things
I
change
know.
so much, headlines change so much that really you just want to know, okay, what's final and what is it going to mean for me in the process? Yes, we've got to make some calls and make sure they know what farmers needs and wants are at this point. But until it's final, it's not impacting me. And so just giving, our listeners and our viewers a little bit of a glimpse into that. But another crazy
Yeah,
thing oh, go ahead, Clinton.
I was just gonna say, like, I do, and I get the frustration. Like, we do. We kind of get in and we kind of fill in the picture and kind of try to tell everybody what's happening blow by blow. And not everybody is into that, and I understand it. But at the same time, like, if you don't know what's going through the House or going
Mhm,
through the Senate, then
mhm.
if you need to reach out to somebody that you know that is representing your district or your part of the country, how are you going to know what to call and say or how to even get involved? And I think that's one thing that agriculture needs to continue to work on is like being involved, because there aren't enough voices out there that are advocating on their behalf. And I think that's the number one thing we have to realize is like there aren't enough. And Callie said it in our interview. There just aren't enough farm state senators and Congress people anymore representing districts that are ag. And so we've got to be a little more vocal and we got to get out there, which is why we try to cover piece by piece and tell people where it is.
As
You have
our
to be able
friend
to get out there and talk about it.
Dr. Joe Outlaw said, and I'll never forget, what happens in Washington can wipe you out quicker than a drought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Policy matters. Even though you may not want to follow every little move, policy matters, and it does
Yeah.
impact. And we've seen that with different administrations. We have seen the impact on farmers. Okay, another crazy thing that happened this week, and I woke
Okay.
up Friday to looking at pictures of a Wisconsin dairy that their barns were just demolished
Yeah.
by
Spring
storm
weather. Oh,
this
yeah.
week, and they did lose. It sounds like they lost a couple cows. Every person was safe, but wild weather. I mean, Clinton, you're talking Bismarck, North Dakota, last weekend that had a high of 99 degrees,
That's so
almost 100
crazy.
degrees. And guess what?
Was that
This
the
week
feels like temperature time or was that the legit actual temperature?
well,
Feels
I
like.
can tell you this, it wasn't a dry heat, so I bet it felt like over 99 degrees. I can tell you that right now,
It wasn't a
because when
dry
you look at
heat.
the humidity and the winds, I mean, it was absolutely crazy. 99 degrees, and this weekend, Clinton, they're talking about frost. I mean, they're talking about close to freezing. And so when you
It's
look at this
crazy.
whiplash right now and you look at weather, there's so much going on. I had Brad Rippey on the show this weekend, Clinton, and
Mhm.
we're looking at record-breaking heat that we had in North Dakota. That's cooled off. We're seeing record-breaking temperatures right now in Texas and parts of the South. I mean, here in Missouri, we're looking at 90 degrees. So we have record-breaking heat in some areas of the
Wait, you're in
country.
Missouri?
Missouri, if you're a
Oh, sorry.
politician.
That's it.
But I
Mi
am.
Missouri.
But I am. Yeah, I'm not a politician. So I have too many skeletons. So Missouri is what I call it.
It's
Anyway,
a closet. It's a walk-in. All right, go on.
definitely a walk-in closet. Anyway, I'm gonna
All
lose
right,
it.
we're gonna laugh.
Come on.
We're gonna die here. All right, go ahead.
Oh, where was I? Okay, so
Hey, Brad Rippey.
yeah, Brad Rippey. We saw them come out with the summer outlook and then the seasonal drought outlook, and it's all this talk about drought, drought, drought. Are we going to see it?
Mhm.
That's really you look at the murder that happened in the soybean market this week. I mean, it
Yeah, it
was
wasn't good.
I don't even. I mean, and
I know.
watch U.S. Farm Report, watch Michelle Rook's markets to understand what happened there because I'm still scratching my head on how a rumor can cause soybean oil and soybean prices to decline that much. But anyway, when you look at the talk of drought, we're really looking
Mhm.
at this summer forecast right now, and it is scary to think how hot it already got in North Dakota. Those winds that really dried out some of those fields.
Sure. Sure.
Here's what Brad Rippey
Okay.
is watching.
All right, so looking at the June outlook, first of all, we've been in atmospheric limbo for about 6 weeks now. We've had a lot of weather extremes, but they've moved around. Think back to the early April flooding in the mid South, the early May flooding in the Southern Plains. We've seen the heat wave, as I mentioned, across the Northern Plains. So very extreme weather, but it's shifting around. Now we're waiting for that summer lock-in. Typically about this time of year, sometime by Memorial Day, we will see a pattern set up that generally will stick around and be fairly stable for the summer months. So we're still waiting for that, obviously, as things continue to shift around. Now it's starting to look like by the end of May on into June, we will see a ridge developing somewhere across the western half of the country. As that begins to lock in, this is the expectation for June: below normal precipitation in much of the western half of the country, possibly extending onto the high plains, and then wet conditions either developing or continuing in the east. Pretty stark difference between the east and west of the country. Then as we shift into the summer month as a whole, the summer months as a whole, that June, July, August outlook from the National Weather Service, kind of the same picture. So we are expecting, and the climate models have been very consistent in showing this for a number of months now, that we will have a ridge across Western North America that could lead to either drought development, drought continuation, or even drought expansion across some of the northern plains and northwestern areas of the country. Big concern. Now, the rain is falling now across the north central US, but we could trend back into a warmer, drier pattern as we move into the summer. So watch for that drought potentially to expand eastward as we move into and through the summer months. And so if we look at the companion product, the seasonal drought outlook, that does show where the National Weather Service expects drought to either persist or develop during the June, July, August timeframe. And by the time we get to the end of August, this is their expectation for drought coverage. Note the expansion in places like the Dakotas, even into the Western Corn Belt. And that's where we'll be watching, because it starts intersecting some of our major crop areas where we could see significant drought during the growing season.
Yeah, that's interesting. You see on that there's Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota. There's even some stretches through Illinois and southern Wisconsin. I was in southern Wisconsin and talking to some folks for our planning tour, and they were saying that they were having to turn on the pivots just to try to get the crop up. And not that it's just dry.
And Clinton, I see, areas like you where you grew up.
Hmm.
You look
Hmm.
at New Mexico, you look at Texas. These Texas cotton farmers,
Oh man,
they can't handle another year of drought.
yeah, it's
And
tough.
so, I talked to a farmer in Texas out of Plainview, and he said, if I could sell everything today and get 50 cents on the dollar, I would.
Mm,
And it's bleak. It's not good. And with no farm bill, that's the other thing is
yeah.
pushing for a farm bill. We have ag economists that think it's not going to be maybe 2026,
Well,
2026 before we
I
get a
th-
farm bill. And so including reference an increase in reference price, including some of this stuff in the one big beautiful bill now, there are some grave concerns, Clint. I can't express this enough. I mean, I saw a farmer tweeted out this week and I had reposted it about wheat prices so low
mhm,
and just,
mhm.
surviving. I mean, it's wheat, it's cotton, it's rice. I mean, it's of course corn and soybeans too, but you look at some of these other areas that they just don't have a lot of other options. Clint, it's
Yeah, I
it's
know.
it's sad. It's gut wrenching.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's and those are the situations where every year farmers are optimistic, right? You start at zero. We want to believe that it can and it will rain, because at some point it will. But when you get into these long stretches and you look at bad markets and you try to deal with all of that, it just makes it hard. It's hard to put that much work and effort into something and then just kind of be so reliant on whether or not the weather's going to work out. Now, I'm going to say, hey, it'll work out. I'm always optimistic. Maybe that's because I grew up in New Mexico in the middle of a desert, but I'm always optimistic that it could rain, and that we'll be okay. That we'll get enough timely rains, even if it's drier, that we'll be able to get a crop out and it'll be fine. But you start to look at Western Iowa. It's a pretty big crop area, and if they have a pretty tough year, I mean that can start to impact things. So, but it's still early. Like we just getting the crop in right now, so
There's a lot
I
can
just
happen.
think it's something to think about, something to
It is.
keep an eye on, but we can't until a forecast becomes reality. It's hard to count it all out because I've done that too.
I mean, at this point, the market's watching the weather. So we need to,
Mm,
it's creating headlines until it happens. We don't know how it's actually going to impact. But I mean, as you mentioned, if you don't have faith in farming, I mean, how do you get through? It's all right now about
for sure.
having faith, especially in some of those challenging areas. All right, talk about having faith.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
get into our next segment. Can't believe that segment. Whatever.
Whatever it is. What is the next segment time? TMI can't believe this just happened.
That's what
Uh,
I mean. Yeah. So let's. I'll start real quick.
yeah, do it.
So I mentioned that we're starting construction on our new office, and
Mhm.
so we have to record. So what you don't see when you're watching the show this weekend
Tyne,
is
Tyne, are they gonna put in some of that Sonic ice? Do you think they're gonna put in one of those Sonic ice makers?
I haven't
Because 'Cause that'd
requested
be
that
pretty
yet.
fancy.
If
You
I
should
have to
ask for
bring
that.
my own, if I have to bring my own, I will.
You
Like
know,
I'm
that
not.
good the good ice. You know what I'm saying? They
You have to tell me I live in the Midwest. I know what good ice is. Okay, thank you. I'm trying to donate a lot of stuff out of our yard to the new office, including a
Yes,
windmill
that's
and an old
that's a great
planter and that
idea.
cheap planter. Like whatever you want it, I'm not even. Let's just donate it.
Well, I got
But
some artwork we could send down there. I got some things out in the barn we could get out of here and send down.
go
I'm gonna
ahead,
do it.
go right ahead. This was my view though this week. So we walked in and they had prepared us. Like be prepared. That's not that's the other side of the office.
Look,
Zach.
you guys got windows and stuff.
Oh,
Look at that.
good. So
It's
it
nice.
kind of looks Zach, come on in. Come on in. You have to be part of this too. So come on in. Just join us right now.
Zach also works at the
Mhm.
office.
Yeah, this is our producer, Zach. Zach, you describe this as what? Whenever you
I personally think it looks like a Dexter blood spatter room. Um,
Stop.
like this thing to
Great
the
show,
right
by the
here.
way. Good
I wish I had a
reference.
Dexter
Solid.
picture to bring
there's
up.
Zach. There's Zach.
Um,
Holding on to the light. So
yeah.
I brought, I brought Windex, I brought like towels. Like we had to get everything dusted because they are busting through that brick wall to make a new door anyway. And so it's small world, Clinton, because the guy
Mhm.
that's leading this, that's kind of the head foreman, I guess you would call
Yeah.
it there, that sits there all the time.
You can
Um,
kind of see the hole in the wall there behind the curtain.
yeah. He is lives on a farm. And
Oh, nice.
so yeah, super nice guy. And so when I walked in, he had asked Shelly, who's kind of our office manager, she's the head woman there. He had asked if, I had a sense of humor, and well, I told him sometimes a little too much. But Shelly had told me I'm taking pictures. Shelly had told me that I have to wear a hard hat when I'm in there or we're gonna get fined. Okay, you know what
Well,
I said
I
to that
think that's
hard
appropriate. OSHA requirements would say,
well, it
yes,
is.
that's
Clinton,
appropriate.
it's required, but you know what I said to that hard hat? That's a hard no, and if we're gonna get fined, go ahead,
Such a mom
send
joke.
me the fine. But anyway,
Hard
that's
no on the hard hat.
a hard no on the hard hat. She was like, "You have to wear it." I said, "I'm not wearing a listen, I'm not gonna have that hair. We are not doing this."
Listen, Ty, you
So,
look good doing the show in a hard hat. I'm just gonna say
it may
you
come to
could
that.
rock that.
It may come to
Get
that.
one of the cowboy hard hats. You know what I'm saying? You could get one of those. Have you seen those? It looks like cowboy hat, but it's a hard hat.
I'm not even
That
entertaining this at this point.
that would,
That
I
is
think,
not an
somebody
option.
somebody send a picture or Photoshop Tyne in a cowboy hard hat in the comments. That would be
Keep
great.
your ideas to yourself. I don't want your ideas anymore. You keep those to yourself. So anyway, this is the scene. It is chaos for the next 6 weeks, but I'm so excited. It's US Farm Report's 50th anniversary this year, which is,
Oh,
something I do not take lightly, Clinton. The fact that the show's
and
been
you
on
haven't been
the
there for all 50 in case there's any snide comments. You haven't been there the whole time. I'm just saying.
air. No, I've been there for 13 of those years, and I don't take it lightly. Like
No.
I stop it.
Yeah. Oh, it's
That
pink.
is
Oh,
it.
it's pink. Look at that. Tyne, you
That
could
is
totally rock that. I don't know. Yes, this is
I
perfect.
didn't even know those existed.
See? There are things you don't know. Now you're interested, aren't you?
No,
I
I'm
think you should
not
wear that around.
interested. Oh my
No.
gosh. I did not even know that was a thing. I'm not I do love hats, so
I'm just
okay.
saying. Just
I'll
saying,
look.
Tyne.
We'll
That would look
we'll
good on you.
explore. We'll explore. Maybe that's how I kick off the 50th anniversary.
Yeah, with your pink hard hat.
Anyway, but on a more serious note, Clinton,
Sure.
you've had a rough
Oh,
couple
it's
weeks.
been a week for our little community. So I live in Indiana. We've just outside of a place called New Carlisle, Indiana. It's where the kids go to school. And I've talked about it before. Kids play baseball and different things. Well, our JV baseball team was just driving to a game and had a big box truck run into the back of the buses. Um, anyway, a good friend of mine who's a farmer, and he and I have coached together for multiple years. Our younger boys team, he is also the JV assistant coach. Was driving one of those buses. His son was on board, and the truck hit the bus, and threw his son through the window, and so now he's been in the ICU just trying to recover, and it's been a pretty tough road. And so yesterday we found out that uh, he's off. They're weaning him off sedation, and he's breathing on his own.
Oh, praise God.
So those things are little wins to celebrate. That's Lucas there on the right, the taller boy, and then his dad Brad, who's also a farmer here in Indiana, and mom Kelly, and then their younger son Caleb, who plays baseball with my youngest son. Brad and I have coached together for multiple years, but anyway, we're all praying for Lucas. He's got a long way to go. He had a couple spots of bleeding on the brain, and so they had some swelling and different things, and so they're just kind of a lot of prayers right now to see how he's going to come out of it. All the other boys, there were other injuries. This is my son and Lucas. They served on the FFA chapter officer team together, and for last year. And anyway, just a good friend. They've played together baseball together, and we've known him for a long time. But it's just one of those things where, like, we're trying to figure out what's next for him, and so they're little wins every day. We don't know ultimately how it all end up, but we've got a lot of prayers out there and a lot of community support. I think the community's already raised nearly $100,000 for them to try to cover all of these medical expenses, because he's probably going to be in the hospital for a while. So it's just a scary deal as a parent, and as a community, to have something like that that's kind of a senseless, needless thing. Just a truck run in the back of the bus and actually hit both trucks, flipped one over. They drive little mini buses, flipped one of them over on its side, and a lot of little miracles in the middle of all of that. But also, with Lucas, he's the one that's still in the hospital and trying to recover. So it's just been as a parent, Tyne, and a community, you just try to make sense of it. You try to give as much support as you can, and I will say the way that people have rallied together is always inspiring. And we know that about rural America, right? Like, whenever there are tough times and when there are hardships and one family's facing something that seems daunting, people are willing to pitch in and help. And I think that's the same. We're seeing it live out in real life in real time here. So,
Well, and
um,
Clinton, we followed the baseball journey. I've been asking you about it because I know,
yeah,
Colton loves baseball and it's exciting. He was pitching varsity, and so
yeah,
I've been asking you about it. No way did anyone think that the season would
mm-mm,
take a turn like this. And so,
yeah,
but the fact that the community has rallied together, you are exactly right.
yeah.
This is why I wouldn't live anywhere else. I mean,
Right.
rural
Well, and we
community.
still, yeah, exactly, and that's exactly right. It's why we chose a smaller rural school as opposed to a big city school, and those are the things that are important to us, and I know to a lot of our listeners, is important to them. But we're hopeful. We don't have all the answers yet. We don't know what the end of the road looks like, but there continues to be a lot of hope and a lot of prayers, and we know there'll be steps backwards as
Yeah.
many as we have forward. So,
Yep.
like, all it takes is time and healing, and we'll see where we get.
Well, thank you for that update. Make sure to
Yeah,
continue to keep us updated and to follow along with his journey. I'm glad things, at least there's glimmer of hope right
yeah,
now,
for
because I know
sure.
when I talked to you a week ago,
He just didn't know.
it was
He
hard.
just didn't know. Yeah, he just hadn't woken up yet, and was just in the hospital and is on breathing machines, and
Yep.
like, those things are scary as a parent.
Yep. Yep. All right, Clinton. Well, we'll wrap things up. I've had a busy weekend officiating a wedding. Um,
Time, time's wedding. I've done 3 weddings. You've done This will be 4, or you've done 4, this will be
this
5?
this is 4.
This is 4. All right. All right. Well,
Yep, and it's our friends who really kind of just took us in when we moved to this small community of Oric.
mhm.
They farm here in Oric, and have, like, this is where they've been, of course, their whole lives. They've taken us in, so I mean, they're our best friends. They become more like family. So it's an honor to
Yeah.
to to officiate the wedding. But I will tell you, if you think the price of corn or soybeans or wheat or whatever right now is a challenge, Clinton, this Jeff, our friend, has paid for 3 weddings in 4 years. In fact,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, who
Now
as
that's
he's
a
married,
commodity that's expensive.
yeah, so his after Saturday, his son-in-law actually works on the farm, works for them, And he had told Ethan, I think it was last year, like, yeah, 2 years ago, like, you, if you propose, I will fire you. Like, give me a year. Give me a year to try to recover. And so,
I
uh,
gotta financially recover from
you
all
talk
of
about
this.
someone that's been hoping that commodity prices make a turnaround. You're paying for 3 weddings in 4 years, and
Oh my
it's
gosh.
it's not as, I mean, it's not as cheap. It wasn't cheap then either, but not as cheap to get married as when you and I did. I cannot believe, with you talk about inflation. Inflation's hit the wedding market extremely hard. I mean, it is
You want to
expensive
listen? You
now.
want a good cake? It's gonna cost you. Just saying.
So it, yeah, he's been really hoping these
Well,
commodity
good
markets.
luck, Tyne. I hope it goes great. Are you
Oh,
doing
okay.
this on? Are you gonna do this on camera?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Well,
Are you gonna DJ afterwards, or you didn't get roped into doing the DJing?
listen, you can't
But
be
you've
the
got
life.
your whole. You've got the whole
Listen,
playlist. You're ready to go.
you can't be the life of the party on the dance floor if you're behind the DJ booth. So no, I got
I
to
think
bring
you
out the
can.
new.
I'd like to see you try. I'm
I
just
got
saying.
to. I've been stretching, preparing, breaking it out. You know, making sure that I can bring some of these moves out of retirement. We're gonna have a good time.
You're gonna do the dolphin.
I cannot believe Chris. I can't do the worm or the dolphin, but I cannot believe he called it the freaking dolphin. Like, who does
Gonna do
that?
the dolphin.
Who does that? I really, for a second, I'm like, you mean the worm? Oh, those Mississippi
Oh,
folks.
God.
You never know what they're saying.
never
All right,
know.
great
All right.
conversation. Week, Clinton. Thanks for carrying it so much. A lot of interesting tidbits there about what's going on in Washington. So thanks so much.
Yeah, you got it. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Unscripted.
Until then, live your life unscripted.
Thanks for joining us. You can dive into more of Unscripted on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and listen to it anywhere podcasts are found. I'm Clinton Griffiths.
And I'm Tyne Morgan. From all of us here at Farm Journal, keep it real as you live your life unscripted.
Unscripted is a production of Farm Journal Studios, where no one grows alone.